All right, week one, we're on to Saturday. Just had my first losing day of the college football season. Posted 3 bets, lost 2 of them. I did get Georgia Tech live, which was cool. But as far as the bets I posted on the website, went 1 and 2. Saturday, there's a bunch of games. Let's do it. Oh, real quick, live show, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We're going through like 30 games. So if you're able to hang out, we'll be live for 2 hours from 10 a.m. up to kickoff. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern time live. All right, let's get into it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly.
Dog walking.
I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. Texas, Ohio State. Ohio State opened up as favorites. As the limits started creeping up, though, it swung the other way around. Actually, it's hanging out about a pick. It did hit Texas -1 when the limits were at 40K. The limits are now up to 60K, and we're pretty much hovering around a pick, Texas and Ohio State. All right, let's talk about it. The big one, Texas, Ohio State in Columbus, 12 noon. We'll start with the Texas offense against the Ohio State defense. I think most would agree that Ohio State probably had the best defense in the country last year. They were second in yards per play, first in success rate. We do have to point out, though, a lot of the pieces from last year's Ohio State defense are gone. There are 9 or 8 NFL players that were on last year's Ohio State. No, 8 players that were on last year's Ohio State defense that are currently on NFL teams. That's a lot of talent gone. Now, I mean, you look across this defense, there's nothing but talent. You throw a rock in any direction, you hit 2 5-stars and 3 high 4-stars. There's nothing but talent here. Devin Sanchez is probably going to be the best cornerback in the country. And next year, we'll probably be talking about how they have the best corner in the country. He's a true freshman. They've got talent. They're loaded. It's just very new. And on top of that, we have to mention they lose their superstar defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, who goes to conference rival Penn State. So, look, again, Ohio State is loaded with talent. They're one of the most talented defenses in the country, but the DC is gone, and they lose a lot of pieces. So it's just new. And the opener, first game of the season against a powerhouse like Texas, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ohio State's defense out of position a time or two during this game. Now, we talked about all the pieces that are gone off the Ohio State defense. We can't downplay that Texas offense lost a bunch of pieces as well. 4 starters from the offensive line are in the NFL. Obviously, the top 2 wide receivers in Golden and Bond are in the NFL as well. The tight end is in the NFL. He was a 4th-round pick by the Titans. Quinn Ewers is in the NFL. I think most would say that Arch Manning at least is supposed to be an upgrade from Quinn Ewers. I don't really want to get into the the soap opera hot take stuff. Obviously, he's a high-end talent. We'll see. As far as the offensive line, I will say it's in better shape than you think. That guy Cole Hudson that's supposed to start at center, he was a starter here in 2022. He played a lot last year, so although he technically wasn't one of the starting 5 last year, that's an experienced Texas offensive lineman with starting experience at Texas. So they're fine there. And I think the guy that's supposed to start at right tackle is Brandon Baker. He was a 5-star recruit, number 1 offensive tackle recruit in the country last year. He didn't play much as a true freshman, but this is supposed to be one of the best offensive linemen in the country. So I think Texas offensive line is fine, although when you look at this graphic, it doesn't look all that great. And then Wisner's back, the 3rd-team SEC running back. So in terms of comparing the Texas offense to the Ohio State defense, just speaking in terms of returning production, you'd have to say the Texas offense is in better shape, at least to start the season, in my opinion. Now, on the other side, I mean, if we're talking about last year's stuff, this is a top 3 defense against a top 3 offense here. I mean, look at this graphic. Texas defensively was 1st in the country in yards per play allowed. I mean, look at those pass defensive numbers. 1st in yards per pass attempt allowed, 1st in effective pass. Ohio State's offense, 4th in yards per play, 9th in success rate. This is about as elite of a matchup as it gets in college football. This is last year's stuff, obviously. But Ohio State's offense, kind of the same story as the defense. There's a lot of NFL talent gone. 4 starters on the offensive liners are gone here. Obviously, Will Howard's gone. Ibuka's gone, although I don't think there are any concerns for Ohio State at wide receiver. They are so loaded. Jeremiah Smith might be the best college football wide receiver we've ever seen. that might be a crazy statement to make, but over 1,300 yards as a true freshman, first team Big Ten as a true freshman. I think a lot of people would say he is the best wide receiver in the country. But regardless, outside of him, they've got Carnell Tate back, who had over 730 yards. That kid Graham was the number 1 wide receiver recruit, 5-star a couple years. They're loaded at wide receiver. And losing the 2 NFL running backs in Henderson and Judkins, that's definitely concerning. But, I mean, Peoples is a 4-star true freshman, had 197 yards. They like him a lot. And then C.J. Donaldson's there. For those of you that don't follow Big 12 football, C.J. Donaldson was a beast at West Virginia. I like C.J. Donaldson a lot. In fact, I was surprised to see him listed as RB2 on the depth chart. He's going to be a beast on this team. So Ohio State, again, kind of the same story as the defense. They're fine. They're loaded with talent. It's just very new. When it comes to the Texas defense, there's a lot of production coming back. The linebackers are in great shape. Anthony Hill Jr. is going to be one of the best linebackers in the country. They also bring back a couple other pieces at linebacker, a lot of pieces back in the secondary. In this whole game, Ohio State versus Texas, the unit that has the most back would be the Texas defense. Yes, they lose the superstars there on the defensive line, but they're reloading. This Texas defense, it's going to be we could probably chalk them up as a top 3 defense before the season even starts. Should be very, very good. As far as betting this game, I did bet it. Looking right now like I got a great number. Let's see what it's at now. So is Texas still laying? Oh, no. Okay, so this game's just bouncing around a pick 'em. I got a Texas plus 2.5, so I got a good number in this one. I think if this game's at a pick, that's probably about where I would have it. Texas by 2.5 on a neutral. I think later in the season, these two teams would be at about a pick on a neutral. But considering the Texas defense is just the most experienced unit on the field, and Arch Manning, although he's not experienced, he's more experienced than Julian Sand. Let's not forget that we have a freshman quarterback making his debut here against what might be the best pass defense in the country. So there's just too many new pieces on Ohio State. I think Texas is going to get them. So, yeah, I bet this one. I'm on Texas plus 2.5. The total, I'm seeing 46.5 now. It looks like early action came in on the under up at 49.5, 50. Those numbers are gone. It's mostly 46.5, 47 now. Obviously, I would lean under, but I wouldn't bet it at this number. Texas plus 2.5. Syracuse on the road at Tennessee. This one was hovering at 14. When they raised the limits up to 20K, looks like they got hit with some Syracuse money, dropped to 13.5. I'm pretty sure it's 13.5 at Circa right now as I'm recording this. Syracuse on the road at Tennessee. Well, actually not really on the road. This is not a true home game for Tennessee. This is at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. So not a true home game for Tennessee. Now, what first jumps out at you when you look at Syracuse roster entering the 2025 season is all the lost production on the offensive side. You look at their offensive numbers from last year. This was an explosive passing attack. Not so much, didn't have much of a rushing attack, and the defense, not much to write home about, but they could throw the ball with McCord. They were 35th in yards per pass attempt, 7th in success rate per dropback. And the question we need to answer here when it comes to this Syracuse offense is, last year's offensive explosion that we saw, was it the personnel or was it Jeff Nixon calling the plays? Because keep in mind, that was Jeff Nixon's first year here with Syracuse. I don't think you walk into a program and put out a passing attack that's 7th in the country in success rate per dropback without having some creative abilities. I think Jeff Nixon is going to surprise us. Now, in terms of the personnel, yes, they got rocked. 4 starters gone on the offensive line. It's supposed to be 3 starters, but unfortunately, Mark Petrie, who was supposed to be a returning starter, torn ACL. So he will not be playing this year. So it's actually 4 starters gone from the Syracuse offensive line. Although Austin Collins should be a solid center that they brought in from Louisville. Steve Angeli, I believe, he has officially been named the starting quarterback. I think he's going to surprise some people. He was the backup for Riley Leonard at Notre Dame last season. We didn't see a ton from him, and I don't think there's a ton of expectations around him. But I think Jeff Nixon, I love what Jeff Nixon did with this offense, and people gave all the credit to Kyle McCord and the personnel. I think Jeff Nixon deserves some of that credit as well. I think Steve Angeli's going to complete some passes here in this game. Yes, with brand new receivers. Yes, with a brand new offensive line. I get it. The personnel is gone. I think Jeff Nixon's going to draw some schemes, some stuff up here. I think Syracuse is going to complete some passes because when you look at the Tennessee defense, now check this out. So obviously, if we pull up the numbers, Tennessee's defense is elite as it gets. I mean, 4th in the country in DFEI, 4th in yards per play allowed, 2nd in success rate. It's as elite as it gets. So how is Syracuse with a new roster going to throw the ball in this defense? Well, a couple things. Number one, they're dealing with some key injuries before the season even starts here, unfortunately. Jermon McCoy, who's supposed to be their number one corner, he's going to miss multiple weeks. And then Hobbs, who's supposed to be a starter on the defensive line, he's going to miss multiple weeks as well. So what looks like, oh shit, like 8 or 9 returning starters, there's a couple of them that are going to be injured to start the season, but it's not solely based on the injuries. I was looking at Tennessee's game logs from last season, and Vols fans are probably going to hate this, and maybe I'm being a little bit nitpicky, but point me out where the passing attacks are. You got Ohio State, who threw the ball in Tennessee. You've got Georgia, who threw the ball in Tennessee. And then who else? You got Arkansas. By the way, Taylor Green went nuts in that game. I know they only scored 19 points. He had a crazy-looking stat line. He was throwing the ball on Tennessee. Outside of that, where are the passing attacks on this schedule? Keep in mind, when they played NC State, it was still Grayson McCall. They had not made the switch over to C.J. Bailey yet. And when they played Florida, it was still Graham Mertz. It was not DJ Lagway yet. So, I'm not down. Tennessee's defense was elite. Not downplaying it at all. I'm just saying you could kind of make the argument that every single time they saw a passing attack, they got thrown on. And I think Jeff Nixon is going to throw the ball on Tennessee. I do. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, Kyle, well, who cares? The Syracuse defense is terrible. And I mean, let's pull up the graphic. Yes, this looks like a mismatch here on this side of the ball. Not going to argue with you. Syracuse defense was terrible last year, 104th in yards per play allowed. Meanwhile, Tennessee's offense, although it wasn't elite with Nico at quarterback, they were still a top 40 offense, 37th in yards per play, 14th in success rate. But here's the thing. Syracuse, you got to remember, Fran Brown is the defensive coach, and not a great look to have a terrible defense, but it was year one with the program, and Syracuse brings back some production on this side of the ball. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 starters there on the Syracuse defense. You got a defensive head coach who now enters year 2, bringing a lot of his pieces back. So you like that. Now, that's not enough to say, hey, Syracuse is going to stop Tennessee. I know, but I expect Syracuse defense to be better this year. And when it comes to the Tennessee offense, I feel like all the talking points, like the headlines with Tennessee's offense, is Nico transferred out, Aguilar transferred in, right? I feel like that's what everyone's talking about. I think that's kind of a lateral move. I thought Nico was impressive at times. There were times where he looked like a freshman as well last year. Aguilar certainly doesn't have the talent that Nico does, but he is experienced. Aguilar was also pretty disappointing last year. App State was supposed to win the Sun Belt Conference. They weren't even close, and Aguilar struggled a little bit. That was in the Sun Belt. Now he's in the SEC. So I think that's kind of a lateral move. In my opinion, what the talking point should be with this Tennessee offense is last year, the beating heart of this offense was Dylan Sampson running behind that offensive line. That was what Tennessee was. That was when they had success, when they handed the ball off to their superstar running back. Dylan Sampson is on the Browns, and 4 starters from the offensive line are gone. So as much as we want to sit here and talk about, oh, Nico Aguilar, is Tennessee better without Nico? Is Tennessee worse with Aguilar? In my opinion, I'm looking at this offense and I'm like, how are they going to move the football without Sampson running behind that offensive line? Those are my thoughts when I'm looking at this offense. Don't be surprised if the Vols struggle to move the ball a little bit. I got a plus 14. I'm on the orange. I know everyone's going to hate this one. I think we're going to see a one-possession game. Syracuse plus 14. Mississippi State Southern Miss. They've been taking some Mississippi State money. They upped the limits to 10K. It moved up to 13. Now they're all the way up to 14. Limits are up to 20K. Looks like it's pretty much 14 across the board here. Mississippi State on the road against Southern Miss. This is a weirdly huge game, kind of a rivalry here. Southern Miss is fired up about this season, and with good reason. If you're unfamiliar with what's going on with Southern Miss, so Charles Huff, head coach of Marshall last year, went on to win the Sun Belt Conference. Immediately after winning the conference, takes the Southern Miss job and brings a huge portion of the Marshall roster with him. So the running joke on social media when it comes to the Southern Miss team is 2025 Southern Miss is basically 2024 Marshall, because he brought such a large portion of his Marshall roster with him over to Southern Miss. So Southern Miss goes from one of the worst teams in college football to all of a sudden a team that is mostly comprised of a team that just won the Sun Belt Conference. Now, does it work right away? We'll see. They opened up the season against an SEC opponent, certainly not the best opener. But in terms of what we can expect to see from this Southern Miss offense this year, let's just look at Marshall's from last year. I mean, this is what Marshall did, so this is what I would imagine Southern Miss is going to do. They ran the ball a lot, 17th in the country in rushing frequency. Braylon Braxton is going to play quarterback, and yeah, he was having some success. I believe Marshall was 7-0 in the games Braylon Braxton started. Mostly an athlete, not a dynamic passer or anything, but it was working. Marshall's rushing attack was definitely tough to stop down the stretch. So is Mississippi State's defense going to be able to make stops against this new-look Southern Miss offense? Well, the Bulldog defense wasn't any good last year, but whenever you're looking at numbers from Mississippi State, you got to keep in mind they play an insane SEC schedule. Coleman Hutzler is the defensive coordinator, and this is year 2 for him. Can this defense take a step forward in year 2? They bring back a solid amount of production, including their star safety, Isaac Smith. They also bring back a couple linebackers, some pieces on the defensive line. So in terms of returning production, they're actually in pretty good shape. They took an injury to the defensive line in camp, or I don't know if it was in camp, but he's going to be out for a while. McClendon, who was supposed to be their up-and-coming defensive tackle. But they're still returning production on this defense. I mean, talent-wise, I don't think Southern Miss should be able to move the ball on Mississippi State's defense, but I think they will. Charles Huff has a history of just getting his teams ready for these big Power 4 opponents. While he was at Marshall, he beat Virginia Tech in 2023. He played NC State to a one-score game on the road, and then in 2022, he beat Notre Dame in South Bend. So, I mean, this is a head coach that has beaten Power 4 opponents with a Group of 5 roster before. So, this is not a layup for Mississippi State by any stretch, where I think Southern Miss just can't keep up. So anyway, on that side of the ball, wouldn't be surprised if Southern Miss dynamic rushing attack is able to work on Mississippi State's defense. The other side of the ball, this is where, in my opinion, I don't think Southern Miss I don't think they can compete. Just for the simple fact that Mississippi State has a healthy Blake Shapen at quarterback makes all the difference. I mean, keep in mind, he got hurt last year, and he looked pretty good before he got injured. He started the first 4 games, had a 166.9 QB rating, and then Van Buren took over at quarterback, and he just didn't offer much in terms of a passing attack. So they got a healthy Blake Shapen at quarterback. Offensive line took some losses, but they also brought in a couple pieces in the port. It'll be about the same. But they bring in Fluff Bothwell. That's an RB from South Alabama. Had over 830 rushing yards last year. 3rd team All Sun Belt as a true freshman. So that could be a serious weapon there at RB. And in addition to that, they bring back their 2 RBs from last year. So they've got a healthy Shapen at quarterback, a pretty loaded RB room. Yeah, I mean, Mississippi State's offense is going to be all right. It was actually pretty decent at times last year. And Southern Miss, they bring in Marshall's defense, which was pretty tough. But, I mean, it's all new. Like, there's no one back from last year besides Lewis at defensive tackle. So, in my opinion, I think Mississippi State can just name their number here and move up and down the field pretty effortlessly. I originally wrote I'd go Mississippi State minus 13 in this one and over 61.5. The total moved down to 60.5, but it's now 14. You can't get Mississippi State minus 13 anymore. So I still lean Mississippi State at the current price. Mississippi State minus 14 over 60.5, but I don't have a bet in this game. Ball State, Purdue. We've got 2 brand new regimes here. Uremovich takes over as head coach for Ball State. He comes from Butler, which is a run-first program all the way. They run the ball with the quarterback often, and they do have the correct quarterback for that. Looks like Kyle Kelly is going to start at quarterback for Ball State. He really, I don't want to say he can't throw the ball, but he hasn't shown us he's capable of being a dynamic passer. I guess that's the way I'll phrase it. But he is an athlete. He started a few games back in 2023. And if you remember, Ball State was terrible, and then he took over, and they went like 3-3 or something. I don't remember exactly, but he took over at quarterback. He wasn't throwing the ball. He was using his legs, but they actually won a few games in there. So based on what I'm reading about Uremovich, I'm not going to pretend like I follow Butler football, but based on what I'm reading about Uremovich, Kyle Kelly might actually be a good fit. He plans to use the quarterback's legs often. Look, I don't know if it's going to work here at Ball State. I wrote down in big letters, the interior offensive line is very inexperienced. So I don't know who's starting at guards and center, and that's kind of important if you want a physical rushing attack. That being said, do we trust the Purdue defense at all? It's brand new. The entire defense is gone. Honestly, the entire defense. Barry Odom takes over, who is a solid defensive coach. He comes from UNLV. But you know what? Ryan Walters was a solid defensive coach also. He's been there the last 2 years, and defense is terrible. So I truly have no idea. I didn't really spend too much time on this one. I guess I would lean Purdue minus the points, but this is just a pass for me. FAU Maryland, Circa had this one up at 15. When they raised the limits to 10K, looks like they got hit with some FAU money. It came down to 14, but then there was some quick buyback right up to 14.5. All right, FAU Maryland, new era here at Florida Atlantic. Head coach Zach Kittley takes over, comes from Texas Tech. He was the OC last year under Joey McGuire. We should expect to see fast-paced, spread offense, passing attack here. Going to look a lot different than the FAU teams we've seen in the past. My question is, does he have the personnel to pull it off? He certainly has the quarterback for it. Velkamp is going to start at quarterback, and although it was a down year offensively for Western Kentucky, he still showed us he has talent. His numbers were fine. 149.5 QB rating, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He also brings with him Easton Messer, who was his slot receiver there at Western Kentucky. He had 793 yards receiving last year at Western Kentucky. He also had like 115 yards and 2 touchdowns in the spring game. So in addition to bringing in the quarterback that can play quarterback in this type of offense, also brings in one of his favorite targets. And you know, those little slot receivers, those little 5'9" slot receivers are elite weapons to have when you're running a fast-paced spread offense. So I expect Messer to get the football a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if FAU's offense hits the ground running and works right away. Yes, I have questions about the offensive line. I have questions about the RB room. I'm not saying it's got elite talent, but I like the head coach. I like the style they're going with, which is going to be a fast-paced, pass-first offense. And I like how they have the quarterback and a receiver he trusts. I feel like that checks a bunch of boxes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it works right away, honestly. It's not like this Maryland defense is scaring anybody. There's a lot of production gone here. This Maryland defense wasn't even very good last year. They were 76 in yards per play, 81st in success rate. They were terrible against the pass last year. So I truly wouldn't be surprised if FAU takes the field and is moving up and down. And is like making Maryland's defense look bad. FAU on the road against the Big Ten. I wouldn't be surprised. The problem is, on the other side of the ball, I don't know what this FAU defense is going to look like. This is a bad defense last year. 109th in yards per play, 64th in success rate, 112th in DFEI. And I don't even know who's playing on this defense. There's just 2 starters back. One of them's coming off a pretty serious injury, I believe. I don't even know who's playing on the FAU defense. And you combine that with the fact that Kittley's going to be running a fast-paced, pass-first offense, that those types of offenses, although they could be effective, they don't always put the defense in the best of position. So, yeah, it's safe to say I don't have a lot of hope for the FAU defense this year. And even though I am not big on Maryland's offense at all, they lose a lot of production. We don't even know who's playing quarterback yet. Is it going to be 4-star freshman Malik Washington, or is it going to be Justin Martin, who transferred in from UCLA? I don't even know who's going to be playing quarterback. I don't even think they announced it yet. I just think this FAU defense is not going to be good at all. So Maryland, regardless of who they roll out onto the field, the fact that it's just a Big Ten offense means they should probably move the ball pretty easily. So I want to bet Kittley and FAU plus 14.5 so bad, but I can't. I think Maryland should, even though I don't like the offense, shouldn't have problems moving the ball. So I guess I'll go over or pass. What's it sitting at now? 61.5. You can get a 60.5 on DraftKings. Yeah, give me over 60.5, but I didn't bet this one. Northwestern, we saw some action in this one. So this one was sitting at 6 for a couple days there. They upped the limits to 5K, 10K. When the limits hit 20K, they got nuked with Northwestern money. Circa's got this one all the way down at 4.5 now. Northwestern Tulane, I think we can all agree that we need to give David Braun a pass for last season. I mean, he was thrown into a really tough situation. First of all, you got to fill the shoes of Fitzgerald, who left after all that time, had a very successful tenure there. They didn't have much production at all coming back last season. They didn't even have a home state. Well, they still don't have a home stadium. That's not fixed. Basically, the point I'm getting at is that was not an easy gig for David Braun. And if we were expecting him to just completely turn the program around immediately, that might have just been unrealistic. So I'm not really drawing any conclusions from what we saw from Northwestern last year. It was this coaching staff's first year with the program. I mean, the numbers are bad offensively, 130th in yards per play. And if you line them up next to Tulane's defensive numbers from last year, this looks like a blatant mismatch. But here's the thing. Northwestern's offense, not only did they not even have a quarterback last year, Jack Lausch started a lot of the games. Mike Wright also started a lot of the games. They really didn't have a formidable quarterback last year. Not only did they address that by bringing in former 5-star recruit Preston Stone, who, yeah, he lost his starting job to Jennings over at SMU, but we know this kid can spin it. So they bring in Preston Stone. So not only just having a quarterback that's capable of playing the quarterback position at the FBS level already puts them way ahead of where they were last year. But in addition to having a quarterback this year, I think they literally got better at every position. They lose a couple receivers, but they bring both their RBs back. The offensive line is going to be better. So I think this Northwestern offense, given the fact that a second year in the system, second year for this coaching staff, they actually have a quarterback this year. I think it takes a dramatic step forward. Now, I don't think it's going to be good, but I think they're way better than they were last year. And Tulane's defense, now, they're still going to be the best defense in the American Athletic Conference. They're just better than everyone else in that conference. But this is a Big Ten team, and this is an AAC defense that lost a lot of pieces from last year. So I think Northwestern's going to move the ball in this game. Not to mention Tulane's defense. I don't want to overreact to the end of the season, but let's be honest. Towards the end of the season there were 2 games that counted. You needed the Memphis, well, maybe didn't need the Memphis game, but you had Memphis at the end of the year, and then you had Army in the AAC championship game. The defense looked like shit in both those games. So it looked elite when they were beating up on the bottom end of the AAC conference. But then when it came down the stretch, you had 2 big games at the end against stronger teams in your conference, and the defense didn't show up. So I think Northwestern's going to move the ball with Preston Stone. Now, on the other side, again, if you look at the numbers from last year, this looks like a glaring mismatch. We got to keep in mind when we're talking about Tulane's offense, I mean, they've got a quarterback in Jake Retzlaff who's only been there for about a month. So, I'm not saying he's not capable of learning the playbook in a month, but that is a little bit of a disadvantage. He just got there. He didn't even know he was going to be playing on Tulane a month ago. Tulane didn't even know he was going to be playing there. So you got a quarterback who was basically just thrown in Jake Retzlaff, matched up against a Big Ten defense who, although it didn't really live up to the hype last year, they were just 56th in DFEI, 65th in yards per play. Number one, their defense wasn't as bad as you think. When you have an offense that just puts you continuously in a terrible position, it's going to make your defense look bad. But number two, Northwestern has a history of recruiting well on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they pretty much always give us a good defense. Now, maybe that changes now that Fitzgerald's not there, but they bring back production on the defensive side of the ball. That guy, Ulane, I hope I'm saying that right. He led the team in tackles. He was Big Ten honorable mention. He's going to be one of the stronger linebackers in the Big Ten. They bring back some production on the defensive line, some production in the secondary. This defense is going to be better than it was last year. And for the simple fact that if the offense is capable of holding onto the football for more than 2 minutes at a time, the defense is going to be better because the offense did them zero favors last year. So brand new quarterback for Tulane, not to mention they lose Mekhi Hughes, who was awesome for them. He had over 1,400 rushing yards last year. First team all AAC. It's probably the most important piece. I know everyone was in love with Mensa. Man, that was a run-first offense all the way. They lose their superstar running back to Oregon. I think this is an ultimate buy low spot on Northwestern and a bit of a sell high spot on Tulane. I think Northwestern's defense is going to be tough. I bet Northwestern here, and I like this one, but I got plus 6.5. It's at 4.5. 5. If you can still get a 5, there's a 5.5 on BetMGM. I would still take that. Obviously, 6 is a key number, but I'm on Northwestern plus 6.5. I'd still bet it. Anything 4.5 or higher, I'd still bet it. Let's go Cats. Toledo, Kentucky. This one was sitting at 7.5, and they've been taking pretty consistent Kentucky money in this one. They raised the limits to 10K, more Kentucky money. They raised the limits to 20K, more Kentucky money. It's now up to Kentucky minus 10. All right, Toledo, Kentucky in Lexington. When I first looked at this matchup, I was like, oh, we got ourselves a football game. Like, Toledo's going to be strong. The more I looked at it, the more I started to not like the matchup for Toledo. So first of all, we'll start with the Toledo offense, which is in great shape this year. I think Toledo wins the conference. I think they win the MAC, and I think their offense is extremely strong. Want to make that clear. I think Toledo's offense is going to be very good. I think they're going to be carving MAC defenses up. You look at their returning production, the quarterback's back, Gleason. They got a ton of production back on the offensive line, including their best piece there, Spath at right guard. You got a ton of production at receiver. Four of their top 5 are back. They even got an Iowa State kid who played defense transferring over to receiver, Crosby, who apparently looks good. They bring in a transfer. They're loaded at wide receiver. Their running back room is loaded. So their RB1 from last year was Wallen-Zach. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. He led the team in rushing. He's back, but he's going to be RB3 or RB4 in the depth chart. That's how upgraded they are at running back. Chip Trayanum, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. He transferred in from Arizona State. This is a guy that was supposed to split carries with Scattaboo at Arizona State. He got hurt last year. And they also have Willie Shaw, who was supposed to be the RB1 last year for Toledo. He missed the season with an injury. So they're loaded at RB. They're solid. They're very good at wide receiver. They got the quarterback back. Offensive line should be better. The Toledo offense is in great shape. Here's the problem. Toledo is an offense that wants to throw the ball, and this Kentucky defense should be very strong against the pass. The front seven took some hits, but Toledo's not really much of a run-first offense, and Kentucky is a program that produces NFL talent at the secondary position. There are 7 DBs from Kentucky in the NFL on NFL rosters right now. To put it in perspective, that's the same amount as Ole Miss. Ohio State has 10. So Kentucky produces NFL caliber talent in terms of defensive backs, and they bring back a lot of production. I think this Kentucky secondary is going to be very good. And although I think Tucker Gleason's going to have a big year throwing the ball for Toledo, I'm not sure if this is the spot for it. I think if you want to be Kentucky, you're going to have to run the football between the tackles. And Toledo, they're a very strong MAC program. I don't think they're talented and physical enough to go into Lexington and just run the ball on Kentucky's defensive front. I think Toledo's going to struggle to move the ball despite me being pretty big on their offense this year. Now, on the other side of the ball, look, I have no idea what to expect from Kentucky offensively. This unit was an absolute nightmare last season. They finished the year 110th in yards per play, 83rd in success rate. I was kind of disappointed. I thought Vandegrift was going to be good. He retired, by the way. I don't know if it was injury related, but he had another year of eligibility. He's retiring from football. Quarterback's going to be Calzada. Dude, I have no idea what to expect from him at quarterback. The good news for Kentucky is it looks like Seth McGowan and Kendrick Law are going to be cleared to play. Both were dealing with injuries in the fall camp. That's their RB1 and one of their main receiving weapons. So there's some good news for the Kentucky offense. Also, I think the offensive line is better than last year. They got busy in the portal. I think both of those transfers they brought in to play offensive tackle, I think they're going to hit on both of those. Both were first-team all-conference. They brought in 2 nice pieces at offensive tackle. So, yeah, I think the Kentucky offense surrounding Calzada is good. I just don't know what to expect from the quarterback, which obviously puts a huge question mark on things. On the other side, Toledo took a lot of losses in the defensive front. It really got smoked up there. I wish if I knew more about the Kentucky quarterback, I would lay the points here and moved. It's up to, you can get 9.5 still. I would lean towards Kentucky, but actually what I bet is the under. I have under 48.5 in this game. You could still get that. Yeah, you can still get under 48.5. So I'm on the under 48.5. I wrote down that I lean Kentucky -9, but it's up at 9.5, 10 now. So yeah, I bet this under 48.5. Old Dominion, Indiana. They took some Indiana money in this one. They raised the limits to 10K. It was sitting at 23.5, got bought up to 24. I think it's sitting at 24 right now. ODU, Indiana, and I'm big on Old Dominion this year. I hate this matchup. This is such a tough opener. So obviously you line up Old Dominion's numbers from 2024 next to the Indiana's. It's going to look like a huge mismatch. And let's be honest, it is. But let's give Ricky Ronnie and Old Dominion some credit for what they were doing to finish out last season. If you didn't follow along with Sunbelt football last year, so Old Dominion, looked pretty terrible the first 7 games. Offensively, they looked pretty awful. They were averaging 23.1 points per game, just over 5 yards per play, success rate around 37.5%. They had no passing attack at all. And then they make the quarterback change to Colton Joseph. And when they did that, the entire offense was set on fire. In the last 5 games of the year, they were averaging 34.8 points per game. Success rate was up close to 50%, over 7.3 yards per play. Passing numbers look efficient. He's more of a dual threat guy, Colton Joseph, but the offense just worked when he took over. And it's an exciting time for Old Dominion. I think it's going to be Ricky Ronnie's year, truly. Colton Joseph is back at quarterback, the guy who took over and gave him that spark. They should be set on the offensive line. They bring back 3 starters, including their best offensive lineman there at left tackle. Wide receiver, a little bit of a question mark. In fact, the skill positions, if you're looking to poke holes in Old Dominion's offense, kind of question mark at running back, wide receivers. But they bring back most of the offensive line and the quarterback that gave them the spark. So I'm big on Old Dominion's offense, man. It was really exciting. It was fun to watch down the stretch. I won a few bets on them during that stretch. The problem is they're opening up the season on the road against a Curt Cignetti defense. And, man, if there's one thing you can hang your hat on is Cignetti putting together an elite run defense. He just always does it. I mean, last year they were 2nd in the country in yards per carry allowed, 1st in success rate per rush allowed. I mean, just no one's able to run the ball on a Curt Cignetti defense. It's tough because I love this Old Dominion, the dynamic rushing attack with the dual threat quarterback. I just hate this matchup for him. Indiana does take some hits in the defensive front, but I mean, they bring back Aiden Fisher, first-team Big Ten linebacker. They're going to be fine. It's Cignetti. It doesn't matter. Like, he's going to be elite. So although I like this Old Dominion offense, I just hate this matchup. Now, on the other side, I wouldn't be surprised if Old Dominion's defense is able to put up a fight here. They bring back a lot of production in the front 7. Pretty much all 3 of their linebackers are back. They got an all-conference defensive end back. They're in good shape in the front 7. The weakness of this Old Dominion defense is the secondary, which makes it interesting because I think Old Dominion is able to make Indiana work for it on the ground. I don't think Indiana's just going to be able to hand the ball off and rip 6 yards of carry off in this game. To beat Old Dominion, well, not to beat them, but to really move the ball efficiently against this ODU defense, you're going to have to drop back to throw it. And we're talking about a brand new quarterback in his first game with the team in Fernando Mendoza. Now, they have a superstar receiver there, Elijah Surratt. So, look, if Mendoza is on the same page with his receivers, Indiana's going to blow them out. And they're down to blow teams out, too. But if they haven't gotten their timing down yet, it is his first game with the team. If that timing's not down, this honestly could be a grinded out game. So I want to take Old Dominion plus the points. I can't do it because we've seen Indiana. They're completely down to smoke a team. So I'll say under, but I'm not betting this game. I plan on betting Old Dominion this season. Just this ain't the spot. They've got 2 tough non-cons. Once we get into Sunbelt play, I think we can find some good spots to bet Old Dominion, but not here. I'll say under a pass. Nevada, Penn State. Look, Jeff Choate's the man, but his roster just flat out isn't good. The offense was actually surprisingly okay with Brendan Lewis last year, but, I mean, they're all gone. 4 of the 5 starters on the offensive line are gone. The top 2 wide receivers are gone. The top 2 running backs are gone. It looks like Chubba Purdy is going to start at quarterback. He was transferring out and then withdrew from the portal, so he's back. He is a good athlete. He has 6 career starts, but I find it hard to believe that Nevada's going to replicate what they did offensively last year. I do like the Nevada coaching staff on the defensive side with Jeff Choate and Kane Ione coaching the defense, but on the road in Happy Valley against James Franklin, who is notorious for, well, he's constantly accused of knowing the point spread. He's a guy that it seems like he wants to cover. So I don't know. I'd probably just lay the big number, but I'm good on this one. Marshall against Georgia, kind of a waste of a game here. Now you might be thinking, hey, Kyle, but Marshall just won the Sun Belt Conference. Yeah, but we already talked about it. Charles Huff left. He took the entire team with him. It's a brand new Marshall team. I do like the hire in Tony Gibson. I think the Marshall defense could be tough come October, but I mean, Georgia could beat them by 40 if they want. I have no interest in this one. Alabama, Florida State. Those Alabama minus 13.5s got bought up when they raised limits to 20K. Circa jumped that up to 14. The limits are now up to 30K, still sitting at 14. All right, Alabama, Florida State. I said this in the offseason video, and I'll say it again. By no means am I saying Florida State wasn't awful last year. They were definitely awful. DJU, they got terrible quarterback play. I get it. They were bad, and I'm not disputing that. What I will say is, in addition to being awful, every single possible thing that could have went wrong for Florida State went wrong for them. They didn't have a single offensive lineman play the entire season. They were crushed with injuries. By sheer blind luck, Florida State has to be better this year than they were last year. They certainly didn't do themselves any favor by scheduling this opener against Alabama, and Alabama's very, very strong this year. DeBoer brings back a ton of production on the offense. I know Ty Simpson's inexperienced at the quarterback position, but I mean, I think most would agree that he kind of adopted Milroe. I don't think, and I'm speculating, I don't think DeBoer would have pursued Jalen Milroe as his quarterback. He was hired and Milroe was there. I think Ty Simpson is more what DeBoer wants at the quarterback position. He's a former 5-star recruit. He has 0 career starts, but he's going to give DeBoer, the pocket passer, more of a dynamic passing attack, which is what he wants to do. So I think immediately, even with 0 career starts, right off the bat, he's a better fit in DeBoer's offense. Now, there are injury concerns on this offense. Jam Miller is not going to be back. That's their star running back. He's not going to be back to start the season. Also, their right guard, Jaden Roberts, he might miss the opener as well. So those are 2 starters. Jam Miller's like their star running back. So a couple injury concerns on the Alabama offense. But I think the passing attack is going to be very, very good. They're loaded at wide receiver. They bring in Isaiah Horton from Miami, in addition to Ryan Williams, who was first-team SEC freshman All-American. He's a true freshman last year. He led Alabama receiving. He's a superstar. So they're loaded at wide receiver. DeBoer's an offensive genius. They've got this former 5-star quarterback that can apparently sling it. I think Alabama's going to have a very dangerous passing attack this year. Now, that doesn't mean I think we should completely overlook the Florida State defense. This Florida State defense wasn't nearly as bad as you think last year. In addition to the injuries, I remember that offense was next level, record-breakingly awful. Just put the defense in terrible positions. They bring back some production here on the Florida State defense. A couple linebackers. They got an ACC honorable mention defensive lineman. Darrell Jackson Jr. is back. There's some production back on this Florida State defense, and obviously it's Florida State. They killed it in the portal, but they killed it in the portal last year as well. We saw the end of that. All I'm trying to say here is if Florida State's defense is able to limit the big explosive plays over top to Ryan Williams and Horton, if they're able to limit the explosive passing plays with Jam Miller injured, I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama's offense gets off to a slow start and sputters a little bit. I'm big on the Alabama offense on the year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they run into some problems here against a Florida State defense that I don't think was nearly as bad as you think last year, and that I think is going to be pretty good. Now, when we flip it over to the other side of the ball, obviously I'm not going to keep that same energy with Florida State, this offense. It was historically bad last year. I still can't believe that these are Florida State's offensive numbers from a year ago. 133rd in yards per play, 130th in success rate. This is Florida State, one of the worst offenses in the country. Not in the ACC, not in the Power 4, one of the worst offenses in the country. And they're matched up against Alabama's defense, who not only was a top 10 defense last year, but Alabama might have the best defense in the country coming into this season. I mean, they are loaded everywhere. They're loaded at linebacker. They're loaded on the defensive line. They're loaded in the secondary. This is a top 3, top 4 defense in the country. Despite being a top 10 defense last year, I think they're better this year. So Florida State's offense can't possibly be as bad as they were last year. I mean, Castellanos is going to play quarterback. We know he's talented. They did bring in some key pieces on the offensive line through the portal. We'll see how that works out. They have running backs, too. Roydell Williams is back, a former member of Alabama. Also, they bring in Gavin Sawchuk from Oklahoma. They're like 3 or 4 deep in the running back room. Castellanos is talented. They've got they've got talent. I am sure that Florida State's offense is going to be better this year, but I have this Alabama defense might be a serious problem. My pick for this game is Alabama. If you can get it under 14, you can get a juice 13.5. Wow, the ESPN bet moved up to 14.5. Really? You can still get a minus 120, 13.5 on FanDuel. But that'd be my pick for this game. Alabama, if you can get it under 2 touchdowns. So Alabama at 13.5 or better. South Dakota against Matt Campbell and Iowa State. Scoop like South Dakota in this one. I'm not going to bet the game, but I get it. Like the sandwich spot, Iowa State coming off the. But I'm going to play the clip of Scoop talking about it.
Sloppy week 1 game. I think there was like 45 fumbles, but yeah, you're coming home to play a South Dakota team. I mean, they're number 4 ranked FCS team with a new head coach. Bob Nielsen retired last year from this team, so their DC is now their head coach. But there is a brand new OC in DC. I don't know. I mean, I like South Dakota here.
Temple, UMass. This one was up at +3. Looks like they've been taking some UMass money in this one. They raised limits to 5K, then 10K. And they got hit at 2.5 again at 10K. It's now down to UMass +2. Temple's on the road against the Minutemen here, and this is kind of an exciting new era for Temple Owls football. Casey Keeler takes over. Everyone's pretty fired up about this hire. We saw what he did with Sam Houston State. Now will we see the positive shift as early as week 1? We still don't know who's playing quarterback yet. That's a little bit of a concern. In my opinion, it probably should be McCoy. He's more of a fit from what we've seen from Casey Keeler teams in the past. He's the dual threat guy. He comes from Oregon State. Not a large sample size. We haven't seen a ton from him, but I think it'll probably be McCoy. But Evan Simon was the starter for most of the year last year for Temple. He's back. We'll see. As of right now, I don't believe they've announced who's going to start at quarterback for Temple. They bring back a lot of production on the offensive side of the ball here. 4 starters back on the offensive line. Both RBs are back. I don't know if it happens overnight, but we saw what Casey Keeler turned that Sam Houston offense into. It was a pretty dynamic rushing attack, fast-paced rushing attack. If McCoy's the quarterback, with the RBs back and the offensive line improved, I wouldn't be surprised if it works sooner than later. Now, does it work right away against UMass? I'm not sure, but it's not like this UMass defense is scaring anybody. In fact, pretty much the entire defense is gone. Now, they do bring in a defensive head coach. He was the Rutgers DC and Harasimiak, so he's the new head coach. They got a defensive-minded coach, but he's taking over a UMass defense that's brand new. Everyone's gone. They bring back 1 defensive tackle there, Grant Randall. Other than that, the entire defense is gone. So I know it's crazy to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if Temple's moving the ball up and down the field. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that Casey Keeler offense working almost immediately here against a UMass defense that I don't think is going to be very good this year. Now, on the other side, we've got the UMass offense, and this is where you could be a little more optimistic if you're a UMass fan. I like this offensive line. I mean, at first glance, it looks like they lost 3 starters, but if you take a closer look, Peyton, or I hope I'm saying that right, Peyton, he started week 1, got injured, and missed the rest of the year. So they technically bring back 3 starters because Peyton was supposed to be a starter, and they lost the 2 guards. The 2 pieces they brought in to start at the guards, they were both first-team Ivy League last year. Kid from Harvard, kid from Dartmouth. So I think this offensive line is going to take a big step forward. Outside of the offensive line, I'm not really sure about this offense. I think they have some decent wide receivers, but I don't know much about Brandon Rose, who transfers in. I think that's going to be the quarterback. I think he comes from Utah, but he's only got 36 career pass attempts. So I don't know much about the quarterback. To be honest, I don't know much about the offense other than the offensive line. I think the offensive line is significantly better, and they bring in a quarterback from Utah. I think the UMass offense might be all right, but that's I'm speculating. I really don't know, to be honest. I just think the offensive line is going to be better. But it's not like they drew a super tough matchup here to start the year. They're matched up against the Temple defense. I'm sure Casey Keeler can turn it around at some point, but I doubt it's going to happen overnight because this Temple defense lost a lot of production. I mean, 2 of the projected starters on Temple's defense were actually with UMass last year, so that's interesting. I'm not sure it's relevant, but it's interesting. Personally, I'm not going to bet this game, but based on what Keeler was doing with the Sam Houston State offense, you would think this is going to be a fast-paced game. I also like both offenses a lot more than I like both defenses, so you would think that points towards an over, but the new UMass head coach is Harasimiak, like I said. He comes from Rutgers, and the OC's from Utah. These aren't exactly like programs that are known for fast-paced football, so combined with the fact that UMass offensive line is strong, I think they may run the ball. We might see some keep away played on the UMass side with some long sustained drives, and I don't think Temple's defense is capable of stopping those drives. So we might see a lot of running the football, so I can't get there with an over. I would probably lean UMass. Can you still get a +2.5? Yeah. I'll go UMass plus 2.5 in this one, but I'm not going to bet it. Coastal on the road at UVA. They got hit with some Virginia money in this one. They raised limits to 10K. It was at 11.5. Got bought all the way up to 13. So the limits are up at 20K. It's sitting at 13 right now at Circa. Coastal Carolina on the road against Virginia. MJ Morris has officially been named the starting quarterback here for Coastal. I don't know if he was actually, Emmett Brown is out for the season, and that's the guy he was competing with. So I'm not sure if he won the job before the injury or the injury made him win the job. I'm not sure. Personally, I think Emmett Brown is probably a better fit for the type of offense I would expect Drew Hollingshead to call here with Coastal. But regardless, we're rolling with MJ Morris at quarterback. We haven't seen a ton from him at Maryland. 117.9 rating, just one start when Billy Edwards Jr. was injured last year. So we haven't seen a ton from MJ Morris. There is some talent coming back around him on the offensive side. The top 2 receivers are back. They also brought in some receivers in the portal. You got 3 starters on the offensive line back, and Anthony Walton started some games as well. So you can say 3.5 starters on the offensive line back. So they lose the RBs, but Coastal offense isn't in terrible shape. I just don't know if MJ Morris is necessarily the fit. If you don't know who Drew Hollingshead is, he was with Western Kentucky under Tyson Helton the last couple years, and Western Kentucky is throw the ball all the way, spread type of offense, passing attack. So MJ Morris is a bit of an athlete, so we'll see. But Coastal Carolina does bring back a decent offensive line. They're matched up against the Virginia defense, and if we just go by return, like who's back on the team, it looks really good, right? Just who's back, who was on the roster last year and who's back, it looks great. Here's the problem. This Virginia defense is absolutely smoked with injuries, and this is actually kind of crazy. So check this out. Here's Virginia's defense. Here's Virginia's defense in terms of returning pieces. CB1, corner 1, Jam Jackson will miss significant time. Dre Walker's another corner. He's injured as well. Keenan Johnson transfers into play corner. He missed all of spring. So I think he's going to play, though. But he missed all of spring. Antonio Clary is the starting safety. I don't think he's going to be ready for week 1. He's been left off the depth chart. Caleb Hardy is another safety. He's behind Clary on the depth chart. He was limited in camp, and he wasn't listed on the week 1 depth chart. So one corner out, 2 safeties out, and the other corner has been limited all camp. But it gets deeper. The best player on this defense is probably linebacker Cam Robinson. He's going to miss the first few games, so he's not playing in this game. James Jackson is another one of their linebackers that needs to step up with Cam Robinson out. He's been limited in camp. I think he's going to play in week 1, but he's been dealing with an injury. Hunter Osborne, who's probably the 3rd defensive tackle, like the first guy off the bench, he's been limited in camp. He may not play in week 1. So this Virginia defense absolutely crushed with injuries. Now, are they still talented enough to shut down Coastal Carolina's offense with a brand new quarterback that I'm not sure if he fits the system? Of course they are. I'm just saying Virginia's defense, some really bad luck here. I think they're going to be fine, but definitely not a good sign for Virginia. Now, the matchup on the other side, we need to figure out if there's life for Virginia's offense post-Calandria. Not that Calandria was setting the world on fire last year or anything, but they do lose their quarterback. Virginia's offense was 118th in yards per play, 104th in success rate. This was not a good offensive year from Virginia. Now, the good news is they bring in an established, experienced quarterback in Chandler Morris, who, in my opinion, can give you exactly what Calandria gave you last year, maybe even be better. So I think they're fine at quarterback. I like Chandler Morris. He's like a 2 or 3 year starter. He was with TCU originally, then North Texas, or 2 year starter maybe. He was with North Texas last year. Solid quarterback. Bad news is there's more injury news. Check this out. So Anamba is going to start at right tackle. He transferred in. He's from New Mexico. He's going to start at right tackle. The reason that he transferred in to start at right tackle, so first they went and got Monroe Mills, who transferred in from Louisville. He was injured, out for the season before spring camp even started. Then they went and got Thomas, another tackle from Arkansas State. He was injured early in camp, out for the season. So Anamba transfers in from New Mexico. He's going to start at right tackle. I mean, he's technically the 3rd option at right tackle before the season even starts. This Virginia team, man, very unlucky. Now, the good news is their main wide receiver, Trell Harris, he's been limited throughout camp. I think he's going to play, which is probably going to be their wide receiver 1. So there's some good news, but it's another piece on Virginia who's dealing with an injury. Now, this Coastal Carolina defense, I don't envision it's going to be dangerous. The entire defensive line is gone. You know what? The entire secondary's gone too. The entire defense is gone with the exception of 2 linebackers there in the middle. So I don't think Coastal Carolina's defense is going to be any good. But if you are a Coastal Carolina fan, you can point to the new defensive coordinator, Jeremiah Johnson. What he did with Louisiana Tech last year was actually crazy. Louisiana Tech under Sonny Cumbie had one of the worst defenses in the country back-to-back years, 127th in 2022, 132nd in 2023. They hired Jeremiah Johnson. He's there for 1 year. They were 70th. And that defensive front was tough. Nobody was expecting much from La Tech last year. They actually had a strong defense. Now, he comes over to Coastal. Does that immediately translate to him just transforming the Coastal defense with no returning production immediately? I'm going to say probably not. I don't know what to do with this one. I'll say, what's this line at now? Where's Virginia? It's at 13.5. I wrote down Virginia minus 12 or pass. It's at 13.5 now. I'll say over, I guess. I don't even know. No, this is a true pass, honestly. I'll say Virginia minus 13.5. How about that? UTSA Texas A&M. This one kind of bounced around. Texas A&M minus 22.5 got bought up. They moved it all the way up to 24, raised the limits to 10K, and then actually got hit with some UTSA money. So Circus got this one at 23. They just raised the limits to 20K. UTSA Texas A&M. A lot of hype surrounding this UTSA team entering the season. This offense should be pretty explosive. They got McCown back at quarterback, a lot of production back on the offensive line. I think it's 4 out of 5. Yeah, 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line. They bring 3 of their top 4 receivers back. The RB is back. This is an offense that was pretty explosive down the stretch, too. In the last 6 games, they were averaging 316 passing yards per game, 8.12 yards per pass attempt, success rate per dropback just under 43%. I completely get the hype. A lot of people are expecting UTSA to be a contender in this conference, kind of like a dark horse. I will say a lot of their games down the stretch when they were racking up these good passing numbers, they were at home in the Dome, and this offense just works a lot better at home. If you split it up to home and road splits, it's pretty serious here. In their 6 home games last year, they averaged 42.3 points per game, almost 6.5 yards per play, success rate over 45%. In the road games, just about half that. 22 points per game, 34% success rate, 5 yards per play. So significant home away splits. This offense just didn't work as well outdoors last year. Obviously, they're going to be outdoors here. They're on the road in Kyle Field, and they're not just outdoors against any defense. This is Texas A&M, and this Texas A&M team is so loaded on both sides of the ball. Defense brings back all their linebackers. I mean, there's like 8 or 9 starters back. Secondary's loaded. Linebackers are loaded. Defensive line does take some hits, but it's still talented as hell. This is a really, really tough opening matchup here for UTSA. Not to mention, we know Mike Elko can coach the shit out of a defense. We saw what he did with that Duke program. What he did with that Duke defense, extremely impressive. Now, year 2 of the Elko era with Texas A&M resources and talent. I think it's safe to say this Texas A&M defense is going to be an absolute problem this year. And although I do expect UTSA's offense to be good, not here. This is tough. This is a really tough spot for UTSA. And honestly, it gets even worse for UTSA when you flip it over to the other side of the ball. First of all, UTSA is an offensive team. This is not a good defense last year, and I don't expect it's going to be a good defense again this year. They lose basically everybody. I think there's 1 starter back on the entire defense. So, yeah, they lose basically their entire defense, and this is a defense that was pretty bad last year. They're matched up against Texas A&M's offense. By the way, A&M might have the best offensive line in the country. The entire offensive line is back, including NFL prospect Zune III at left tackle. This is going to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest offensive lines in the country. They've got all their RBs back. And by the way, Le'Veon Moss looks like he is going to play in this game. So they got their loaded offensive line, superstar running back, along with 2 other running backs. Ruben Owens is a 5-star. As a freshman last year, he was getting touches. So Texas A&M should be able to hand the ball off and legitimately get 7 yards per carry in this game. If Marcel Reed takes a step forward as a quarterback this year, I don't know if there's many teams out there that are able to beat Texas A&M. They are that talented. They also bring in Concepcion, who I'm really excited about. I think he's a perfect fit for this offense. If you don't know who that is, he was with the NC State breakout freshman year in 2023. He was a freshman All-American wide receiver. Didn't get many touches last year. Not sure why. I'm assuming that's probably why he transferred out. He's a small, shifty guy, gets the ball in space. He can also run the ball. Kind of reminds me of a Percy Harvin type, kind of like a Swiss Army knife, I guess. Like, he kind of does it all. Not really like a big jump ball receiver, but like get the ball to him in space. And I kind of feel like it fits perfectly with Marcel Reed and Le'Veon Moss in this offensive line. I feel like he's the perfect piece, honestly. So if you're an Aggie fan, you are fired up for this year. And against this UTSA defense, you should do literally whatever you want. I bet this game. I laid it. I'm on A&M minus 22.5. It's crazy laying more than 3 touchdowns to UTSA because truly they should be a strong Group of 5 program, but this is a tough matchup. And yeah, I think A&M's going to have their way with them. So I laid the 22.5 in this one. LSU Clemson, and the Clemson minus 3.5 seem to be getting bought up every time it hits that way. Dropped to 3.5. They raised the limit to 10K. The Clemson's got bought up. They raised it to 20K, moved it back to 4, then dropped it to 3.5 again, raised the limits to 40K, got nuked on Clemson again. They moved it all the way to 4.5. Then there was some buyback on LSU. Then it dropped to 4, then buyback on Clemson. We're sitting at 4.5 on Circa right now. There are mostly 4s, though, across the board. All right, LSU Clemson, and we've all heard the hype here. Clemson's absolutely loaded. This is basically an NFL team. This passing attack, you can't even draw it up on paper better than this. Klubnik's back after a big breakout season. He's a 2-year. This is his 3rd year starting. This is Klubnik. Sorry, mind fart there. So Klubnik, this is his 3rd year as a starter, and there were rumblings, criticisms coming in, and he kind of silenced everybody last year. He had a great season, a 148.2 rating in 2024. Also was using his legs a lot, which is something we didn't see in 2023. Klubnik looked great last year, and entering the college football season, you got to say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Offensive line only loses one piece. Wide receivers, they're stacked with Antonio Williams, one of the best receivers in the country. Probably has a good chance of being a first-round pick in the NFL draft. The other top two receivers are back. They lose the running backs. Phil Maffa, he's on the Dallas Cowboys, and then Jay Haynes is actually hurt. I think he's going to miss the whole season. So they lose the running backs, but Gideon Davidson seems to be the next guy up. He's a true freshman, extremely fast. He's a track star. Apparently, he is having a breakout camp. So, yeah, Clemson has the pieces. They're going to be loaded on offense. I will say, we kind of don't know LSU to be a defensive program in recent years. I kind of like this LSU defense. You got to remember, Harold Perkins is back, and you rewind a couple years, this might have been the best defensive player in college football. He was everywhere. We kind of forgot about him because he missed most of last season with an injury. He's back. He's healthy. It looks like Whit Weeks is healthy as well. That's first-team SEC linebacker. Those are 2 guys that can get sideline to sideline and make plays. They've also got a pretty talented secondary. Remember, this used to be DBU back in the day. I say back in the day. It was like probably like 5 or 6 years ago. But this used to be a program that really recruited well in the defensive backfield. Little worried about the defensive line, but they've got talent there. They're probably going to be slightly outmatched by Clemson's offensive line, but there's playmakers on this LSU's defense, and I think LSU's defense is going to be better than people expect. On the other side, Clemson's got NFL players on the defensive line, just like the offense. Almost everyone's back. This defense should be very, very good. They're probably 8 or 9 points better than any other team in the ACC. Now, we know trying to play defense against a Brian Kelly LSU offense is never something that's easy, and Nussmeier comes back. And Nussmeier's good, by the way. He was dealing with something in the offseason. I think it was like I forget. It was like an illness or something, but he's good. So Nussmeier's going to play. He comes back. He was pretty good last year. What I'm worried about with this LSU offense, you know they're going to have the weapons, right? You know they're going to have the wide receivers. They got Durham, superstar running back. He had 750 yards as a true freshman. He was a true freshman All-American last year. They've got the quarterback. You know they're going to have the weapons. They got the superstar up-and-coming running back. I'm worried about the offensive line here because 4 of the 5 starters on LSU's offensive line are now in the NFL, and I'm reading who the projected starters are, and it's not anyone that's proven that jumps off the page. Now, it's LSU. I'm sure they've got plenty of talent there on the offensive line, but I'm worried about this unit, especially early in the season. And to open up against Clemson that's got a couple NFL players on that defensive front, I think they're going to be outmatched. I completely understand why everyone's taking Clemson here. The problem is there's two aspects to it. There's one, you evaluate the teams, you evaluate the talent, price out the game, right? I think this game should be about Clemson minus 5.5. So that would make me lean towards Clemson at the -4. There's the second part, which is what do I see happening? And I can just already see it. I can see Clemson figuring out a way to F this one up. I can see, I think Clemson's going to be a very popular pick here. And I could see Twitter cursing Clemson out. I could already see it. I could already see everyone in the news feed saying F Clemson, Clemson sucks. I could see them laying an egg in this game. So I can't bet LSU because like I said, I think the fair price should be 5.5, 6 for Clemson. I'm looking at this under. 57.5 feels high to me. Like I said, I think this LSU defense is overvalued. I think the Clemson defensive line is going to get the better of LSU's offensive line. But it's just sitting there at 57.5. What? I'm wondering why they haven't taken under money. That's what I want to be on here. The under 57.5. But I would have this one at like 50.5. And you could look at that and be like, oh, that's a huge edge. You have 7 points. But I think it's naive to think I have a 7-point edge over an LSU Clemson total. It's just, what am I missing? Why? I don't understand why this total is so high. I personally think it's way too high. So I'm going to watch this line. If I see any movement, I'm waiting for like Pinnacle to drop down to 56.5, and I'm going to grab 57.5 as quick as I can. That's what I'm going to wait. I want to see someone move first, but I want to be on an under here. Under 57.5. If I was gun to my head and forced to pick, I would take a Clemson -4. I'm not going to do it, though. Give me the under. UTEP, Utah State. This one was sitting at 6. They raised the limits to 10K. Immediately got hit with some Utah State money, then some buyback on UTEP, and then eventually this got all the way up to 7. Immediate buyback on UTEP at 7. So it looks like they got hit pretty hard on UTEP as soon as that touched 7 because they dropped it all the way back down to 6. So right now it's sitting at New Mexico, Michigan, and honestly, who knows what to expect from New Mexico this year. What happened last season was just wild with Bronco Mendenhall. If you didn't follow college football last year, so Bronco Mendenhall takes the head coaching job in New Mexico. Didn't have a ton of production back. People were not expecting much from New Mexico. What they put out was one of the most explosive offense. It was probably the most explosive offense in the Mountain West. It had better offensive numbers than Boise. An unstoppable, explosive, big play machine offense out of nowhere. They ended up winning 5 games. I think their win total on the year was like 2.5. So completely exceeded expectations. Their defense was terrible, but they had an explosive offense. So in 1 year, Bronco Mendenhall did that with the help of Jason Beck at OC and Dan Pierre at quarterback. Here's the problem. They're all gone. Bronco Mendenhall leaves after just 1 year. He takes the Utah State job, which is, by the way, is his hometown where his wife and kids live. So that's why he took that job. Jason Eck takes over. He comes from Idaho, and I'm going to be straight up here. I have no idea how. I don't think this offense is going to be very good. I don't know if you watched the live show the other night. I had Duck on, the Action Network guy. He's big into the FCS, and he was saying he'd be surprised if New Mexico scores more than once in this game. And that kind of confirms how I was feeling because I'm looking at this offense. I'm like, how is this going to work? You got an FCS quarterback. You got a bad offensive line. I don't have a ton of faith in this New Mexico offense. I actually think this New Mexico team might be the exact opposite of last year. Last year, nobody was expecting much from New Mexico, and the offense turned out to be explosive. This year, I think the defense could surprise us because, look, they lost everybody here on the defense except for a pair of linebackers. But look at the pieces they brought in. 3 in particular. Eck comes over from Idaho. The 3 defensive pieces he brought with him, Keyshawn James Newby, who's first-team all-conference, all-American edge rusher from Idaho. Jackson Eck, who I think might be his son. 98 tackles, first-team all-conference, all-American in the FCS. And Abe Williams, corner from Idaho. He's an FCS All-American kick returner in 22. He missed last season with an injury, but so Eck comes over from Idaho. Idaho is a very strong FCS program, and they bring 3 defensive pieces that are probably right off the bat 3 of the best defensive pieces in the whole Mountain West. So I actually think the Mountain West defense, the New Mexico defense is going to surprise us and be pretty strong this year. Do I think they're going to be pretty strong on the road in the Big House? Absolutely not. Michigan should beat the hell out of them, but I think this defense could surprise us and be pretty strong. We are talking about a freshman quarterback making his college football debut. I don't know. It would probably be Michigan minus the points. I was just sharing my thoughts on New Mexico. I have no idea how to price this game out. Probably be an under or Michigan minus the point. Or you know what? New Mexico team total under or something. I'm trying to stay away from team totals. I'm sticking to big markets only. But New Mexico team total under like 10 would probably be my bet, because I agree with what Duck said the other night on the show. I don't know how New Mexico scores points in this game. UTEP, Utah State, and speaking of Bronco Mendenhall, we were just talking about this guy with New Mexico. Here's his new gig. He's over at Utah State. And now I feel like it's the opposite. Last year, no one was expecting anything from Bronco Mendenhall and that New Mexico team. Now this year, I feel like expectations might be a little too high. Not that they're projected to win the conference or anything, but people are looking at what he did with New Mexico's offense last year. And then they're looking at the Utah State's offense numbers from last year, and they're like, oh, if he did that with New Mexico, what is he going to be able to do with Utah State here? And I think we need to pump the brakes on that. First of all, he doesn't have Beck with him, the OC. He was over at Utah and took Dampier with them. So the Bronco Mendenhall's a defensive coach. Beck was coaching the offense. He's not with them. That's number one. Number two, he doesn't have the horses here on Utah State's offense. I do think Bryson Barnes is a good fit. Bronco Mendenhall is a seasoned head coach dating back to BYU 10 years ago, and his quarterback there at BYU was Taysom Hill. Last year with Dampier, obviously was running the football a lot. So he has a history of physical running quarterbacks. They've got Bryson Barnes, who fits the mold. So I do think he has the quarterback that kind of fits here, even though Mendenhall's a defensive coach. But outside of that, like, who's on this offense that's jumping out? It's not like completely terrible. There are some pieces here through the portal, but it's all brand new. And I think to expect Utah State's offense to even replicate the numbers they did last year is a little irresponsible. So I'm not that big on Utah State at all this year. I think what happened at New Mexico last year is kind of clouding our judgment on what to expect. Now, they do open up the season against UTEP. And yes, Scotty Walden's first year with UTEP was a disaster. 3-9 straight up, 3-5 in conference. The defense doesn't return a ton of production here. There's serious question marks at corner, but if I had to choose a strength for this defense, it would be the front seven. Not that I think UTEP's run defense is going to be any good, but I think it'll be the strength. And Bryson Barnes is not really proven as a passer. I'm not trusting Utah State to throw to the sideline this early in the season with a brand new coaching staff. So UTEP's defense might actually be able to put up a fight here. And on the other side, I know this is going to sound crazy, I think UTEP's going to have themselves a decent Conference USA offense here. They got Malachi Nelson at quarterback. Now, I know you bring up the numbers, UTEP's offense against Utah State defense. We're looking at two of the worst units in college football. UTEP offense, absolutely terrible last year. Utah State's defense, absolutely terrible last year. Here's the thing. Utah State is probably going to be terrible defensively again. UTEP, I don't know. They got some talent. Malachi Nelson, they have a 5-star playing quarterback. We'll see. Originally recruited by USC, then he was at Boise, now he's at UTEP. Finally, we haven't seen this guy start yet. He was a 5-star recruit. They bring back second-team all-conference Kenny Odom at receiver. They bring back their wide receiver too, Cam Thomas. They got some pieces on the offensive line back. I think this UTEP offense is going to work. I'm excited for minor football, and I'm not excited at all for Utah State's defense. It doesn't give us much hope at all. I mean, Bronco Mendenhall, great head coach, but he's a defensive head coach, and New Mexico's defense was one of the worst in the country last year. Now he takes over Utah State, who also had one of the worst defenses in the country last year, and brings back basically no production. It brings back a safety and a defensive tackle, who are actually key pieces on the defense, but and a linebacker. I'm sorry, 3 starters from last year's defense. I'm sure Utah State's defense is slightly better than last year, just based on the fact that they were the worst defense one of the worst defenses in the country. But I don't know how you lay 6.5. Give me the Miners. UTEP plus 6.5. I bet this one. Georgia State, Ole Miss. I personally think Ole Miss is going to take a step backwards this season. They had such a loaded defense. I can't believe they didn't go to the college football playoff with that defense last year. That's a travesty. But basically that entire defense has gone off to the NFL, and they didn't really reload like I thought they were going to. So I think Ole Miss takes a slight step backwards this year. I mean, that being said, Georgia State is terrible, so I have no interest in betting. I mean, Ole Miss can win by 40 if they want. I guess Ole Miss or pass. Rice, Louisiana. This one was at 13.5. It touched 14, and then they got nuked with Rice money all the way down to 11.5, and that's where it's been sitting. They raised limits to 10K and then 20K, still sitting at 11.5. So they got hit with some Rice money in this one. Rice on the road against the Cajuns. We got an interesting new era here for the Rice Owls. Scott Abel comes in, takes the head coaching job, and if you're unfamiliar with who that is, he's been coaching Davidson for 5 or 6 years, something like that. Runs the option. So we are going to see the option offense at Rice. And by the way, he was very successful with it at Davidson. I think he led the FCS in offense like for the last 5 years or something. Very successful running the option at Davidson. Now, is that going to translate to a successful option offense at Rice? I'm not sure, but it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. I don't really know if they have the personnel to pull it off, at least not right away. I mean, I'm not really even sure who's starting for Rice on the offensive side of the ball. I just know that offense, if prepared correctly, is very difficult to stop. And let's be honest, this Louisiana defense, it definitely wasn't the strength of the team. In fact, it was pretty bad last year, especially against the run. They were 85th in yards per carry allowed, 133rd in success rate per rush, 133rd. This is a very bad run defense last year, and they're opening up the season against a brand new look option offense that nobody has seen before. I don't know. Rice might be able to move the football in this game by the sheer element of surprise, because I don't think anyone knows what's about to happen with this Rice offense. You take a look at the Louisiana defense. They lose their key pieces there at linebacker, lose a couple of key pieces on the defensive line. The run defense can't possibly be worse. It was really bad last year, but I don't expect this to be a good run defense. So I think Rice is going to find opportunities to move the football. I'm not expecting them to come out and light the scoreboard up, but don't be surprised if Rice is able to put together a few scoring drives in this game. On the other side of the ball, we get to the strength of the Louisiana team, the offense, obviously. They were 12th in the country in yards per play, 36th in success rate. This is a very strong offense. Rice defense, I don't know where this came from. Down the stretch, they were actually playing some great football. They were 38th in yards per play allowed, 14th in success rate. As far as the returning production for Louisiana, obviously Wooldridge is in the NFL, and 3 of the top 4 wide receivers are gone, which is a little disheartening because this was a very pass-heavy offense. Now, as far as the replacement at quarterback, it's going to be Walker. Wait, has it? Yes, it is going to be Walker Howard. He's a former 4-star recruit, originally from LSU, and then I think he was at Ole Miss next. Just 10 career pass attempts in 3 years. So this is not a guy with a proven track record or a ton of experience, but it's a 4-star recruit at LSU. I would imagine he's a pretty talented kid. I don't know much about him, but he is going to be the starter here at quarterback for Louisiana. I trust DeSormo, so I wouldn't be surprised if he picks up right where Wooldridge left off and Louisiana's a dynamic passing attack again. Losing the wide receivers is going to hurt, but I'm not worried about Walker Howard. He's a 4-star recruit from LSU, and they've got a great coach and offensive system there working from last year. So I think it'll be fine. It's the Rice defense that I'm not really sure if Rice is able to give that to us defensively again. The defensive coordinator is gone. It was Brian Smith. He went off to... Damn it, I was just talking about it. I forget where he went. But the defensive coordinator, Brian Smith, is gone. The entire defensive line is gone. And I kind of feel like the whole year defensively was a little bit of a fluke for Rice. No one was expecting that defense to be good. We were expecting the Rice offense to be good. I think the Rice defense takes a step back, although having an offense that runs the football and controls the clock certainly helps the defense out. As far as betting this game, it seems like a lot of sharp action came in on the Rice side. Bet down from 14 to 11.5. Actually seeing 10.5 now. That's crazy. So originally my pick for this game was Rice or pass, but now that there's, if there's a 9.5, it's probably going to be Louisiana or pass. I kind of want, I guess, over at 47.5. The total's been bet down, but I really don't know with kind of 2 brand new offenses. This is such a tough game. I'd say if you can get 9.5 or better, Louisiana. If you can get 14 or better, Rice, and lean over at 47.5. I won't be betting this game. Eastern Michigan, Texas State. If you've been watching the channel, some offseason stuff, you know I'm pretty big on this Eastern Michigan team. I like Chris Creighton. I don't think he got a fair shake last year. I pointed out in the offseason video that this is year 3 with these coordinators, Piatkowski and Ben Needham. This is year 3. And in year 2, the team improved on both sides of the ball despite being crushed with injuries. And that was kind of the lead story with Eastern Michigan last year. They were so injured. I mean, their offensive line, they had one offensive lineman that played more than 9 games. Just one. They were really banged up on the offensive line. Their star receiver missed basically the whole season, which, speaking of which, it looks like Porter Rooks is finally going to play for Eastern Michigan. He transferred in from NC State last year, didn't play, missed the entire season. Looks like he's going to play. At quarterback, they lose Cole Snyder, but honestly, I think they take a step up here with Noah Kim. He was originally a Michigan State recruit. He actually played well at Michigan State a little bit there, then kind of fell off. But Noah Kim's going to play quarterback. They've got their wide receiver 1. Their wide receiver 2 was third team all conference. He was technically the wide receiver 1 last year because Porter Rooks was out. But I like the offensive line. They bring back a bunch of production, quarterback, wide receivers. As far as running back, I'm not 100% sure. They've got McMillan. That's probably going to be RB1. He's got a lot of experience, but I like this offense. If they're healthy, they're in a way better position this year than they were last year. And they're matched up against a Texas State defense that loses a ton of production in the front 7. All the linebackers are gone, just one piece back on the defensive line. And this, keep in mind, this is a Texas State defense that on the season had some good numbers. They were 30th in yards per play, 22nd in success rate. I mean, this is a solid defense. You look at this graphic, this looks like a mismatch. Like, how is Eastern Michigan supposed to move the ball against this Texas State defense? But Eastern Michigan, if they're healthy, should be significantly better on the offensive side of the ball. And Texas State defense, not only did they lose a ton of production, but this defense was kind of playing like shit down the stretch. The last couple games, they got lit up there. They were not playing the best football at the end of the season. On the other side of the ball, Texas State offense, obviously they lose their star quarterback, Jordan McLeod. I think he's on the Bucks, or I think he's at an NFL camp somewhere. I'm not sure. It looks like Brad Jackson has been named the starting quarterback over Nate Yarnell. I'm not 100% sure if Nate Yarnell got injured. I really don't know. But Brad Jackson is going to be the starting quarterback. He's a redshirt freshman, dual threat guy, apparently a very gifted athlete. I don't know a lot about him, but it is going to be Brad Jackson. Between him and the 2 RBs, though, they brought in a running back from UNLV. Between him and the 2 RBs, they should be able to run the ball pretty efficiently. I don't know if they're going to have much of a passing attack, though, which puts Eastern Michigan's defense in a pretty advantageous position. Eastern Michigan's defense comes down to the 2 linebackers, Bailey and Mauchin. Both missed last year. Mauchin missed 9 games, and Bailey missed the whole season. Both missed last year with an injury. If those 2 guys are healthy, this defense will take a step forward. If not, it's going to be a rough year again for Eastern Michigan defensively. This is another one where I don't know how I'm so far off the market. I don't know why we're getting plus 14s. I would have this one at like 7.5. So I don't like when I'm that far off. Maybe I'm just too high on Eastern Michigan, but I think 14's way too many. It'll be Eastern Michigan plus 14. I haven't bet this yet, but I really want to. Eastern Michigan plus 14 for me. Next, Georgia Southern, Fresno. I really don't know what to do with this one. I mean, I know Clay Helton's going to have that Georgia Southern offense humming. He always does. That's originally a USC guy. He brings his quarterback back. I believe this is the first time in his tenure he's had the quarterback back. But the defense was so terrible last season. There was one bright spot of the defense. It was Watson Trent, and he transferred out. So this was already a terrible defense, and then you lose the best defensive player in the conference. And on the other side, they're matched up against Fresno State. I mean, do we know anything about Fresno State after that Week 0 game against Kansas? Is the offense going to work under Entz, or is it not going to work, or is Kansas that good? I feel like I haven't learned anything about Fresno after that Kansas game. So personally, I think making Fresno a dog at home is a little bit of an overreaction. So I guess I'd say Fresno, but I'm not interested. These teams, 2 big question marks. So I'll say Fresno State. Hawaii, Arizona, and more question marks here. Obviously, the big one is Micah Alejado going to play. I think as of right now, he's officially listed as questionable, but I don't think he's going to play. Duck was on the other night talking about this one. This is a relatively meaningless game for Hawaii. They've got winnable games on deck. You don't want to risk this kid getting injured in a game that you're probably going to lose. I very seriously doubt Alejado plays in this. I mean, Arizona's defense was terrible last year, but they bring back some production on the defensive side. I think Arizona's in a much better position as a whole than they were last year. Arizona's biggest problem was it was the whole offense was based on Fifita being an elite Big 12 quarterback, and he just wasn't last year. Now they lose the superstar wide receiver. Obviously, McMillan was a first-round pick, but they bring back everyone else. They bring in some transfers. He's got plenty of weapons. They also bring in a star running back there, Mahdi from Texas State. So I actually think Arizona's offense is way better than last year, and I think Fifita will look more like the 2023 version of himself, and this whole process happening, I think, makes the defense look better. So I think Arizona will be all right this year. Without Alejado, I guess I'll say under, or I'll say under for this one, but I don't have a ton of interest with the question mark there for Alejado. Utah, UCLA. I mean, this one opened up at like Utah -1.5 too. So they've been taking consistent Utah money all summer. In terms of the last few days, as they're raising the limits up, though, it's pretty much been back and forth. They get hit. They're taking Utah money at 6. They're taking UCLA money at 6.5. It's been back and forth at circa a few times. The limits are now up to 40K. I think they're at, it's been bouncing back and forth between 6 and 5.5. I messed that up. It's been bouncing back and forth circa between 6 and 5.5. Utah, UCLA, it is a big year for the Utes. Enter Jason Beck and Devin Dampier to revamp this Utah offense. A lot of people are pretty big on this Utes team, and I completely understand why. What Beck and Dampier did at New Mexico last year was absolutely wild. So you take a team like Utah that gives us an elite defense year in and year out, and you bring in an explosive quarterback in Dampier, and you bring in one of the rising stars in terms of creative offensive minds in Jason Beck. There's high hopes with Utah. You combine all that with the fact that they're bringing back their top 6 offensive linemen from last year. Utah, a program that usually produces some pretty good talent on the offensive line. I completely understand the hype. I have to push back and say I think the hype's gone a little too far. When's the last time Utah had an explosive offense? People are starting to price this game as if, Utah's just going to take the field and put up 35. And it's like, in the first game against a Big Ten opponent, I think the hype's gone a little too far here to think that Utah is just going to be this elite offense out of the gate. I understand the hype, but it's gone too far, which is why I bet the other way. We'll get to it in a second. Look, I can't defend the UCLA defense. They lost so much production from last year. The UCLA defense was actually pretty solid last year, but they lose almost everybody. They also took an injury in camp. Key Lawrence, the safety that comes in from Ole Miss, I don't think he's going to be ready for the opener. So I can't defend the UCLA defense. What I can push back on is the Utah offense, that the hype's gone a little far. I'll say that. On the other side, this is where I think this is where you buy on UCLA. People are acting like bringing Nico in is not a big deal. Man, I thought Nico was very impressive last year as a freshman in the SEC. Now he moves over to UCLA. He's got a strong offensive line in front of him. He's got a great back in the backfield in Javion Thomas. I think UCLA's offense is going to be pretty strong, and we kind of just always assume, Utah's going to have a great defense. They always do, and that's true under Whittingham. They usually do have a great defense. But they took serious hits on the front 7. 5 of their starting front 7 on the defense's back. This is the opener against an NFL talent at quarterback who's an athletic, who can make every single throw in the playbook. 6.5 is great. Oh, it looks like it's down to 5.5 now. I'm on UCLA. If you can get 6 or better, I'm on UCLA plus 6.5. I bet this. Colorado State, Washington. This one was at 20. They got hit with Washington money. They bumped it up to 22. Actually saw some buyback on Colorado State at 22. Been sitting at 21.5. Limits are now up to 20K. I think it's still sitting. Yeah, it's still sitting at 21.5. Colorado State, Washington. I got to say, my first reaction to this one was 21.5 points. That's a bit disrespectful to Colorado State. Keep in mind, Washington loses their DC, Steve Belichick, who did a hell of a job with this Washington defense last year. He's gone. He joined his dad over at North Carolina. That being said, they hired Ryan Walters, who I am personally a big fan of. What Ryan Walters did to that Illinois defense a few years ago, outstanding. I'm a big Ryan Walters guy, so I think they made the correct hire, but it is a new DC here in Washington. They also lost a ton of production on the defensive side, which we'll get to in a second. Now, Colorado State's offense was a bit disappointing considering their schedule. 49th in yards per play, 41st in yards per carry. Those numbers look pretty solid. Surface level, 86th in success rate, struggled to stay on the field. And like I said, they had an easy schedule. Colorado State probably should have done a bit more last year. But they do bring back their experienced quarterback here in Fowler Nicolosi. Other than that, the rest of the offense, they've got some talent at wide receiver. They lose Torrey Horton, but Torrey Horton missed 8 games last year. He wasn't even really playing last season anyway. Hopefully, Antwi is able to play in this game. That's a transfer from Ohio State. If he's able to play, I actually like this year's receivers better than last year. Bringing back a third-year starting quarterback is rare in college football against a brand-new defense with a new defensive coordinator. I think Colorado State can move the ball a little bit. Now, as far as Colorado State's defense trying to make stops here, it's going to be a struggle. I mean, Damon Williams, look, has the hype gone too far for Damon Williams? I'm not sure. It was exciting. If you don't know who this is the new quarterback here at Washington. Started 2 games at the end of the season last year. Obviously, his stats are on the screen. They look excellent. 176.8. I mean, they look excellent. But the stats don't do it justice. This kid was exciting. Like, breaking tackles in the backfield, throwing bullets. In the bowl game, I think it was. Was it the bowl game? Yeah, I think it was the bowl game. He drove all the way down the field. It scored a touchdown that would have tied the game, and then they went for 2 in the win instead of kicking and lost. But it was exciting. I completely understand the hype because this kid looks like the real deal. I will say it might have gone might have gone a little too far for just 2 starts, but it's going to be cool. I'm excited for this kid. I think it's important to point out that Washington lost both those games. One of them was against Oregon, but they lost both those games, so maybe the hype has gone a little too far. But as far as the talent around Jamal Williams on this Washington offense, they're pretty solid. Denzel Boston is going to play. It's one of their main wide receivers there, 834 yards receiving last year. Big Ten honorable mention. He was limited all camp. Looks like he is going to play. They bring in Amari Evans from Penn State on the other side, who's got 4.3 speed. Offensive line, they bring back 3 starters. That should be slightly better. They bring back Jonah Coleman in the backfield, Big Ten honorable mention. This Washington offense is going to be strong. Second year under Jed Fish. This is going to be a strong offense. And Colorado State's defense, they lose a lot of production. They'll take a step back. So, look, Washington's going to be able to move the football in this game. It's a matter of can they make the stops to cover this huge number. I personally would lean towards the over because I kind of think Washington's offense should definitely score, and I kind of think the experienced quarterback, I think Fowler Nicolosi will figure out a way to get the ball in the end zone a couple times for Colorado State. Here's the problem. Neither of these teams run a fast pace. Last year, Colorado State was 94th in plays per game. Washington was 86th. So it's tough to get up and over a big number like 53.5 if I'm not expecting a fast-paced football game. So I'll say over 53.5, but I don't think I'll actually get there with this one. Thanks for watching. Remember, 10 a.m. Eastern time, we'll be live for 2 straight hours right up to kickoff. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Let's have ourselves a good one. All my bets are posted on KyleKirms.com. If you want to go see all the bets I personally have open, just click on open bets on the website. It's only for Sauce Network Plus members. But yeah, let's have a good one. See you all in the morning.